Hey guys, Mayflom here, and I'm working on a Father's Day card with my own design. You can see it here. I just took a black pen and I wrote first of all, I drew a heart just with a single line. Then I took a pen and just took my time here and drew best dad ever. And as you can see, I made sure, for example, the S and the D touch. Some of the letters have a swirl, so they're touching the edge. Made sure everything was touching a point. It's going to add stability, but it's also going to make it so that when it cuts out as one piece because everything is connected. There's nothing just left out there. It cuts fully, and I just love this, and I love that with my ScanNcut, this is something that I can do. So once I'm happy with this, I'm going to place it on a piece of paper, and we're going to scan, and we're going to do scan to cut data because I want to create a cut file, and I'm going to leave it in grayscale mode. Now, once it is scanned and recognized, we have some options. If we hit this button up at the top, it's going to just do the exact outline, which is not what we want. If we hit this button on the bottom here, and as you can see in the pictures, it's going to cut all the lines, but it's not going to leave, in other words, it'll cut both of the lines. It won't leave a gap or leave, you know, where all of these pieces intersect. It would cut both of the lines, which we won't want because then it would be in a bunch of different pieces. This one in the middle here is going to cut both sides of the outline. In other words, it's going to cut the inside and the outside, and that's precisely what we want. And I love that I don't have to remember any fancy names or terms. I just look at the picture to remember. And I'm bringing this in for a couple reasons. Number one, that's going to reduce the size of my cut file so that when I go to do this, I will be able to move that a little easier. Secondly, I can see where the lines of my paper made a mark. In other words, it picked it up. I don't want that. I don't want a shadow or anything in here, so I don't want those pieces picked up. And once we're happy with that, and I can see that everything picked up nicely, we're going to save. And you can save a variety of ways. I tend to not use, you could use a thumb drive if you wanted. I tend to use just the machine itself. And once it's in there, okay. And now we can go and cut it out. So to cut it out, we're going to go into Pattern, Saved Data. And I know it's going to be the last one on the machine. So I just go up here to number 3, and here it is. And there it is. We're going to say okay before we do anything. Now, before we go, and I'm going to bring you in here just a little bit more. Before I go and do any editing, I'm going to go right into here, push this button right here. Because as you can see, you see the little red dot right there? So even though I scanned this as one thing, a lot of times what happens, especially when you're me, and there are imperfections, there's little white gaps, there's little tiny bits, the machine picked all of that up. So it actually has a number, and I'll try to see, it has a number of cut areas that it's recognizing. What we want to do is click this button and select everything. Oh my goodness, look at all those things that select, and say okay. And then what we want to do is this button right here would weld everything together, make it just the outline. We don't want that. This button will unify everything. So I say okay. Oh, excuse me. I didn't quite want to say okay yet. So, but by pushing that button, that makes it all one file. Now, if I change my mind, I could push this button again, and guess what? Now it is no longer unified. Now it is all the individual bits and pieces. So if for some reason there was something I wanted to pull back, I could. But if I have this, what I can do now is if I would like to resize this a bit, I'm going to make this a height of 4.5. So we can do all the editing like we'd do any other file, but we're working with our own personal homemade file. So I'm going to put that up there and say, okay. And I'm going to make note that it was 4.5 because what I'm going to do now is cut this out. And in fact, when you're doing something like this, it's a good idea. Just go ahead and on some piece of scratch paper or what have you, me on the edge of this, I'm going to put 4.5 and an up arrow so I know that's height because I will forget. But once you have this all set just the way you want it, the next thing that you can do is to go ahead and cut it out. So I have got some, as you can see, I cut this out boldly out of one piece of paper. I'm going to get myself a new piece of paper and just go ahead and load up my mat with a new piece of cardstock and get this cut out. Once cut out, look how great this is. And here's what I love. Right now, for me, working big is definitely to my advantage because I don't have really tiny detail control, and it worked really well for me to make it this big. But maybe I don't want my actual thing to be so big. Well, guess what? Thanks to the ScanNcut, I can resize any size I want. I could cut this out of stencil material. I could do so much. I mean, here you can see my test here that I was running. I used, instead of cutting out of stencil material, I used the cardstock, but then put some ink over it just to see how that would work. It works great. So that's totally an option for us as well. But what I'm thinking is dark green and light green. Keep it simple, keep it fun for Dad. So I want to make a card that folds, but look, my card did not come out well. Guys, this is what I do a lot of my time here in the studio. I test stuff out. I figure out what does and doesn't work and how it does and doesn't work. And here I had a scrap of cardstock that I ran another test with, and it came out very close. And I'm going to accept very close. If you want perfect, here's what you'll need to do. You'll need to cut out 2 of these, or rather 2 of the outlines, set them onto paper, and trace the exact thing you want. That's definitely a possibility, but I want to get like darn close enough that I'd be happy. Okay, and for me, let me show you how to do that. So we're going to go back in, we're going to pull that file back up again. Okay, and this time we're going to go into here, and this time we're going to try to grab, it's not letting me grab the big one. Let me try, there we go. Okay, so I'm trying to get that big heart and pull it away. And then I'm going to push this button right here, and I'm going to select this button, which is going to let me select just a specific area, and I'm going to say OK. Now this is still highlighted, which is not good. We don't want that. So if I just touch that, if I touch it, it's included. If I touch it again, it's unincluded. Now that, I just noticed there was a couple areas that didn't get included. Now they are. We're going to say OK. What am I going to do with all those? Well, this. I'm going to hit the garbage can, because I want it to delete everything except my big outline heart. That'll be, that outline, that line is the line drawing of the outside of this. That's all I need. So I'm going to go into here, and first, before I forget, I'm going to size this down to 4.5, where we are, and I'm going to increase this number to 2. Okay, and I'm going to say okay. Then the second one, I'm going to go in here again. Now, first of all, I'm going to flip it. The reason I'm going to flip it so that they are mirror image is so, this is where I went wrong in this one. When it closed, it's not the mirror image, which means that the wrong side of the heart, I need it to be opposite, okay? So that when it closes, it's correct. That's what I'm doing with this one. So, first we do that. Then I'm setting it on top. And you would think that rotating it 90 degrees would work. The problem is, because of the way, watch this, because of the way it does it, it wants to square my design up. My design isn't square. Okay, my design, you can see it's off center. So had I had a very symmetrical heart, this would be a good amount easier. But of course, I have to do this the hard way, right? So we're going to go 10 degrees at a time. If I go 10 degrees at a time, it is letting me do this. Okay, now that's 180, and I'm going to say okay for right now, because I want to go into here and I want to raise this up a bit, and I also want to scoot this over a bit. Actually, I'm going to pull this all the way to the side so that we have a side edge. I'm going to say okay, then I'm going to go into here and I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to go to whoops, what just happened there? Oh, okay. So you just saw that, and I'm going to put this back. So when I went to rotate it just a little bit, because the wall was there, it had to bump it out in the middle where it actually could. So let's be just a little less on that, and then I'm just going to rotate it just ever so slightly, and that looks pretty good. But what I'm going to do is just try to bump it up a little. Basically what I'm trying to do is find that sweet spot. Okay, go in here. I'm trying to find that sweet spot where both sides are just ever so slightly overlapping at at the middle here. Because now I'm going to come in here, select everybody, and now I'm going to weld them. And what that'll do is it won't cut out the part that overlaps, which is totally what we want. So with that done, and I'm going to say, okay, let's weld it up. We're ready to cut. All right, guys, let's see if this works. I think it should. We're going to go ahead and cut our cardstock and see how that turns out. Okay, you can see I've not folded it yet. So moment of truth. I'm going to meet up those two corners here. Ah, it worked. It totally, oh my gosh, it perfectly worked, you guys. That little bit of tedious 1 degree here, 1 degree there completely worked. Look at that. Look at that. We have our card. So the only thing you're going to find is when you go to put this on the top, there's going to be just an ever so slight amount of green that's going to be exposed to the back side. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm just going to get some tape runner here, and I'm going to take my time and do this off camera. I'm just going to place a good amount of tape runner all over. If I had been thinking with something so small and detailed, I could have backed this paper with an adhesive sheet and then run it through the ScanNcut. You just need to adjust for thickness, but I'm just going to keep adding, and then I am going to assemble this and it's ready to gift. How great is that? I just love it, and it's such a fun thing to do, to play with your own handwriting, but also to design your own cut files and to make intricate cards to give away. I will be back with more as always. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them there in the comments. Same with anything you'd like to see in future. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting.